I'm Kate. Welcome to Blooms in the Yard. Today we're doing sort of a September highlights tour of both the front and backyard. I wanted to show some things that bloom in September, just kind of some things that look really great and later in the season, so that can help you guys in your garden to, if this is a time of year when things are looking a little drab or a little sad, then maybe these are some plants you can try. So over the course of the last month, I have just, if I see something looking really good or newly blooming, I've filmed it real quick. And today's October 1st, so these are the September highlights. I've been meaning to do a full tour of the backyard for a while, but every time I went to film it, I was like, I don't know that it looks that much different than what it looked like back in July. I feel like my back garden is pretty steady, so there's not a lot of perennials coming in and out of bloom. I do have a lot of things blooming in spring, but for most of the summer, it's more interesting foliage and a couple of annuals here and there, so there's not a huge amount of change. I also have a lot of hydrangeas, which were blooming in July, and you know, the blooms still look great now. They're just more green. But what I did want to do is just show, you know, some things that are newly blooming.
We are going to start in the back garden. I know that we've looked at these morning glories before, but they're finally doing what I wanted them to do on this trellis. They're really filling it up and looking gorgeous every morning. I was just remembering back to July when they looked really sad. I had a little bit of morning glory vines, a little bit of hyacinth bean vine, and the honeysuckle, which is supposed to eventually fill up this whole trellis. I almost just took the morning glories and hyacinth bean off because it looked so sad having three things. It kind of looked weedy, but now they look wonderful. I'm so glad I kept them and let them do their thing. The morning glories are looking great everywhere in my garden. I have a little bit of them growing on my wisteria arbor just to have something blooming there this time of year. They also look great with my cherry tomatoes in the front garden. I did not plant any morning glories in there, they just reseeded. They came up a little bit later than if I had planted any in there, which I think is good because they didn't have as much time to take over. I also have them growing along the railing to the stairs to get to my back deck.
I like the morning glory and then the autumn blooming clematis on this other side of the yard. You know, with the sun shining down, early morning light. Morning glory is looking really pretty this morning. And so I do like that I have this clematis on both sides of the yard. It kind of ties it together. This one just showed up over here, so I'm not sure if it reseeded or if my neighbor planted it. Either way, it works for me.
September is definitely prime time for the autumn blooming clematis, and so we saw it on the east side of my yard, and this one I did plant on the west side of my yard, and I love the way that it just kind of glows at this time of year. And really at night you can really see it well and it just pops. In my last video I just hung up a mirror on this trellis and I'm really loving that look. Now if you're not familiar with these, this is the Sweet Autumn Clematis. A drawback is that it reseeds, and so I originally planted one plant here and it has definitely reseeded, and I'm just okay with that because I'm letting it take over the entire trellis. So there's probably 4 or 5 plants here. And if they get in the lawn, I can just mow them down, and I do pull them out of the bed. I think that this is an interesting alternative to a Macrophylla hydrangea. If you like to have some pink, it's a similar size, and it's growing in absolute full shade. It blooms a little bit later, and it's not quite as showy, but it certainly has a similar look, doesn't it? I think.
I mean, if you want the big, huge mop head, no. But if you just want nice dark green leaves, some pretty pink flowers, and something that's guaranteed to bloom every year, then this is the native turtlehead. So this is actually a perennial, but it does kind of get to be the shape of a bush. It's right around 3 feet tall, 3 to 4 feet wide. It does spread, not aggressively, but I've taken some little pieces out of the edges, given some away. I really love the turtlehead. Again, I know the bloom shapes aren't like hydrangeas, but when I'm looking from my kitchen window, standing back, I often think that that's what it looks like to me, is a not quite as showy Macrophylla hydrangea.
Here we are almost a month later and it's still blooming. I did want to point out that you can easily take these little brown spent blooms off. I sometimes do, sometimes don't, just based on whether or not I have time.
These are really fun. These are the hardy begonias. I'm really enjoying those right now, and supposedly they'll come back in zone 6, so hopefully they will.
I'm randomly out here when the waterfall's going crazy, so it might be really loud, but I think that these I'm assuming that these are seed pods, are really cool. I've never noticed those on begonias before. You can kind of see it kind of starts like this, and then it starts to drape a little, and then these are the seed pods.
So as we move down just a little bit to the right in my back garden, here is the dittany. This is again newly blooming in September. It's definitely an understated flower, but I think it's really sweet, and I think that it can look hopefully even better as it fills in more. I have planted some just recently in a sunnier area of my garden, and it's in the oregano family, so I'm hoping that it will look better. I think it's sweet. I definitely love it here planted with the impatiens. On the variety of this red coleus, but it really performs well. I don't need to deadhead it. It does pretty well in sun or shade. It just gets a little more green on the margins in the shade. In the sun, there really isn't any color on the margins. It gets a lot bigger in the sun, and it looks so gorgeous here by this Japanese maple. So as I said at the beginning of the video, I really rely on interesting foliage for my back garden because it's so shady, and this Brunnera is just a real performer in that area. It looks good unless it gets really, really, really dry. It just looks good and really brightens up a shady spot. So even though it blooms in the spring, I'm including it in this September tour because I love the way it looks right now.
We'll take a quick peek at this side yard because this the hyacinth bean vine is looking really good.
This hyacinth bean vine, I gave it a trellis, but it decided it would go a little bit rogue and climb up the cable on the house, but I'm leaving it because I knew that these blooms were on their way and they were going to be really pretty. And so this is just one of those annuals that you kind of have to wait a while, but when they come, they're really pretty and worth the wait. Also in the west side garden is the wild Ageratum, which I know I've mentioned before. It is a native, it's in the native video, and it comes with a warning. It spreads pretty aggressively, but it's in its full glory and full of blooms, and so I did want to show it in this video. It's gonna bloom, starts in late July, August, and gets better and better, and here it is blooming in September. I've got it here in the west side. It's getting not full sun, but doing really well. But I've got it a lot in my front yard in full sun, and it doesn't skip a beat. No problems with that. I don't go out of my way to water it or anything. I think it looks particularly pretty in my garden here by my front sidewalk with the cardinal basil and the red coleus. And then I have it growing here with a dahlia on the left side of my driveway. These peonies got powdery mildew and I needed to cut them down early, and that left kind of a blank space. The dahlia and ageratum are giving me something in this area now that it's kind of blank from those peonies. This dahlia is definitely flopping over, which I don't suggest, but I've found that when the dahlias are like 5 feet tall, even if I tie them up at around 3 feet, they're still flopping over and breaking. So maybe I just need to only grow shorter varieties, I'm not sure. But this ageratum looks amazing for having just been moved here in, I can't remember if it was July or August, but I moved it just to fill in this space and it didn't skip a beat. I also have it in my mailbox garden with the cardinal basil again and just some autumn joycetum. There's still a ton going on in this mailbox garden, so along with the autumn joycetum and the cardinal basil, the ageratum, we have plenty of dahlias. It's mostly annuals. I'm getting ready to pull a lot of these out, especially that cardinal basil. It still looks, decent for getting so late in the year, but I kind of am anxious to get some of these annuals out and start thinking more long term. I feel like with it being so full of all these annuals, it's hard for me to picture like where the blank space is, what needs to be filled in, and start making a plan for next year. And so I'm just getting anxious to do that. So that is the street side. And then I feel like we've got 2 totally different personalities. When we come around, I know the eucalyptus is crazy. It's a really cool plant. I just gotta figure out a better place to put it. But here is what we look like from when we're looking out from our garden. One thing I definitely think I want to do is I want something more consistent on the street side for people to see, and so this has been just, I would say, best performing, most consistent thing for me in this area. So my plan is to put the vinca on the street side next year. See if I can get backed up and kind of give a better view of what this looks like. It's a little bit crazy. These are peonies, and so the yellow looks kind of nice right now. I mean, they're not, in their prime, but it's kind of funny how nice that looks with this celosia. And this blank space is the salvia that was there, was just really struggling. So this will look different next year. I'm trying to make a plan, but like I said, with it just being so full of all this other stuff, I'm having a hard time picturing. Maybe I just need to sit down and write down what perennials are in here. And it's probably one of those things where
I could probably take out all the annuals, and the perennials that are there would actually fill in, because like this area is Russian sage. I have an evergreen in here, creeping like juniper. It is alive. Let's take a peek. Yeah, so I also have quite a bit of red penstemon throughout here, assuming it's still alive. And even in here, that's why I've got this trellis keeping that salvia off of a few things. There's like a veronica and a showy penstemon. So it's one of those things where I probably, if I just removed all of the annuals, would have a decent amount of perennials to fill in.
Just yesterday in my sun border, I had such a nice time watching this hummingbird moth. Like, I remember the first time I saw one, I was like, is that a hummingbird? And then it moves like a hummingbird, and it looks like a hummingbird, but then you're like, but it's kind of like a really big bug. It loves this red pentas. This red pentas is definitely a highlight right now and has been doing well throughout the summer. I mean, as you would expect and hope for from annuals, but I really struggle with annuals. I think I just don't water enough. So I'm just suggesting pentas if you are like me and you want something low maintenance that you can forget about for several days and it will still look okay. Also, I find that it's fine in sun, but it's also fine in like part sun. So that can be hard to find too. Plants that can kind of take both. On the other end of my sun border, I have this area that I'm glad that it's front and center for people to see, because I'm obsessed with this area. I absolutely love it. For those of you who saw me make this trellis, I did decide to do it the same color as the trellis on my east side yard, and it matches the garage door and my front door. It's this teal color. I love the way it looks with this dahlia. I love the way it looks with the goldenrod, and the Raguchi clematis is coming up beautifully from the transplant. And of course the crepe myrtles are starting to slow down, but they've been great performers and have kept this area looking great all season. The star of the show in this area right now is definitely the goldenrod. It is just spectacular. The bees are all over this. They're all sleeping on it at night, and during the day it's just buzzing. This showy goldenrod, it's the Solidago speciosa, is not as aggressive as the Canadian goldenrod. It's supposed to just be clump forming. I would say it was maybe 4 feet last year, and it's like over 6 feet this year. I did have to tie it up. There were 3 big huge pieces kind of splayed out, and I tied them up all together. But I'll be honest, for a while I was like, should I get rid of this? But then once it started blooming, I was like, oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad I kept it. The next area I want to look at is in the Potager garden. I love the jewel tones happening in this area. That definitely was not on purpose. You know, generally I go for purples, and I just happened to put the peppers in this area. I have the kind of red and yellow decorative peppers, and then the sweet peppers. This orange with the purple in the dahlia is just really pleasing to me right now. On either side of the gate coming into the potager, I have a bunch of Bennery's giant wine zinnias, and they are attracting the butterflies and the hummingbirds and the goldfinches, so I've really been enjoying them, and there's just an abundance of zinnias. My smaller gate on the other side of my garden is flanked on the outside by a dahlia on each side, and they're not necessarily staying exactly where I'd like them to stay. They're kind of flopping in weird places, but it's really pretty, especially with the morning light coming through in some of these pictures.
I'm quite thrilled with the color of this Firelight Hydrangea. We've had some cooler night temperatures that we don't always get here, so it's just gorgeous. It's just wow. I'm really loving it. So yes, to get these pink blooms you need some cooler temperatures and some rain, and that's what we've had. And I did, water them too when we didn't have rain, but I'd say if you want a panicle hydrangea that will turn pink, this is definitely the one to try. It's the Firelight Hydrangea. Here we are. It's the last day of September, and this trailing lantana finally looks decent. It really hasn't bloomed much for me. It probably doesn't get quite enough sun here, but I thought, that finally looks kind of good after waiting all year. It's an annual. I don't plan on growing it again, or if I do, I'd have to try something different. I put one here in the ground and one in a pot, but that pot ended up getting lots of shade. So anyway, it's pretty cute. The reason that I chose it is because I really like lantana, but I don't like orange and yellow and red. So I liked that this one was purple, but the trailing, it's definitely not as vigorous. Again, not probably getting enough sun, but I do think it's looking really cute right now.
I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Hopefully it gave you some ideas for some things you can plant to have blooms and nice foliage in the early fall.